Hello and welcome to the Boxing Insider, where this week we'll be asking, will we see an undisputed heavyweight world champion in 2022? Last week, the WBC ordered Tyson Fury to defend his belt against fellow Brit Dillian Whyte. I caught up with Frank Warren to find out what this means for the Gypsy King.
Well, Frank, last week the WBC finally ordered negotiations to start between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. So what does that mean?
Well, what they're saying to us, obviously there's a negotiation period to try and make the fight, and if we can't agree terms, then they go to purse splits. The problem we've got is we need to know what the purse splits are going to be, because how can we negotiate properly if we don't know what the end result's going to be if we have to go to purse bids, if we decide we're going to go to purse bids. So I'm quite sure we're going to get some sort of guidance on that in the next few days, and then we can get down to some, what I would consider to be then some serious negotiations.
Do you think you need to have those guidelines, because we understand what Dillian's side are after, but of course we understand what Tyson thinks is entitled to as well?
Everybody's got a view. You know, some are saying 80-20 like we do, some are saying 60-40, but we need to know what it is. And once we know what it is, then that's it. That's what we work towards.
When it comes to the idea of AJ stepping aside, do you think that is now out of the equation and Tyson's next fight is now going to be Dillian Whyte?
Well, unless Dillian Whyte and AJ step aside, that's where we are. So, you know, we just have to deal with where we're at. If they both were to step aside, then that's great. But then who's going to fight? Who's going to be the first in? So it's a bit messy. And I think we're getting to a stage now where, I don't know, maybe let's just get on with our contractual commitment or our obligations, get them out of the way. And that will then leave us in a position where the winners can fight each other. And I believe that if the fight happens with Dillian, I believe that Tyson will be the victor. And I believe that, I hope I'm wrong though. I think Usyk will beat Joshua, but I hope Joshua wins, because if he does, then that sets up the fight that we'd all like to see. Although I would like to see right this moment, Usyk in with Tyson. And
London or the UK still the most likely destination. We heard talk of Manchester, Cardiff. What do you think we're looking at in terms of a venue?
Well, you've got to be realistic and look at the time of the year. First of all, you know, of course it's a stadium fight, but to put it into any stadium that doesn't have a roof, and unfortunately none of them have got roofs other than Cardiff, that's where we are. I mean, you know, that March is not exactly, you know, we won't be out in our shorts, will we, in March, and football season's on, so that'd be a problem with nearly all the grounds. So, you know, Cardiff would look to be the favourite.
Here's Gareth A. Davis with his take.
And the WBC have not actually, according to Frank Warren, put a timescale on the negotiation. So we are in a little bit of a no man's land at the moment. But what does it mean if they fight? It's a great fight for Dillian Whyte. It's a massive opportunity that he's waited for 3 years, while the fights between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury have played out. You know, what does it mean for Tyson Fury? It's another guy he's got to face, as he says, as he always calls it, another bum in the shower. I think it's a good fight. It's an intriguing fight, and I think it's the biggest all-British clash we've had since Frank Bruno and Lennox Lewis, you know, nearly 2.5 decades ago. So we've got to look on it as a great fight.
So it looks like we're going to have a huge domestic dust-up between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte in March of next year. But does the body snatcher stand any chance of winning that WBC belt? Dave Allen doesn't think so.
I just think that everything that Dillian is good at, Tyson negates it. You know, Dillian's got a great jab, but he's facing a man that's 6'9". You know, he was defensively sound. He's got good reflex. He's got a good jab himself. He's a good body puncher. Good luck getting inside Tyson's reach. He's a good puncher. How often do we see Tyson getting hit? And when he does, he always seems to get back up. He's been hit by the hardest punch ever the last 20, 30 years. You know, it caused him problems, but it didn't stop him winning. So I just think that Tyson got an answer for everything that Dillian will come at him with. But an interesting fight nonetheless. Dillian Whyte, for me, is still one of the top 10, possibly top 5 heavyweights in the world. So it's one of the best fights you can get. I just personally think that Tyson is so far ahead of the pack. I don't see him having much trouble in this fight.
There had been some chatter over the last couple of weeks that Anthony Joshua may agree to a step-aside deal to allow Tyson Fury to take on Oleksander Usyk for all 4 world titles. I caught up with Eddie Hearn and I asked him, with the WBC ordering this fight between Whyte and Fury, does it put any talk of a step-aside deal to bed?
Yeah, it certainly makes that very unlikely. It was unlikely anyway. You know, those conversations were chats that I'd had with the other side about a process that I may propose to Anthony Joshua if it made perfect sense in so many different areas. So it wasn't as if that was particularly close, but certainly with the order of the Dillian Whyte fight, it now looks like that's next for Tyson Fury, and AJ will rematch Usyk for his belts that he lost at Tottenham Hotspur.
Where did the idea of the £40 million step-aside deal come from?
I mean, and what's so worrying is people report this stuff. Do you know what I mean? I wish it was 40 million. Might have been done a couple of weeks ago.
That's 10% of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, steady. So I didn't think about that. But no, look, you read a lot of rubbish. Those weren't the numbers at all. And it's not even about the money. You know, it's just about if that's a good idea for Anthony Joshua's career. He would love to fight the winner of that fight, and then he could fight Undisputed, which he's wanted the whole time. But with the Dillian Whyte fight now, it looks like, you know, let them have their fight, AJ fight Usyk, and then the winners can fight each other for the Undisputed.
And very finally, when it comes to that fight between AJ and Usyk, how close are we to the rematch being agreed, and where and when will that take place?
Well, the rematch is contracted, and you know there were talks over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, Usyk had his own talks with Team Fury, if that system could be worked. So now we go back to Alex Krasuk and we start making our plans. I think April is realistic for that fight. We'd love to do it back in England.
So, what does Dave Allen make of that fight? What does AJ need to do to win back his belts and become a 3-time world champion?
I think the most important thing is belief in his self-belief. I watched the last fight and Usyk won convincingly. He outboxed him, he outthought him. You know, at times he beat him in a firefight. You know, he even outpowered him. He did everything. It was pretty one-sided, to be honest. So in rounds, maybe 10 rounds to 2. But Anthony didn't believe in the corner. You know, you're hearing the cornermen, they're saying just blatant lies to build confidence. But that's what I hear. And I'm thinking, mate, you're watching something completely different to me. Great work. That's not great work. No, not at all. You're getting outboxed, outmaneuvered. You can't face the former cruiserweight king. You know, Olympic gold medalists. I know they're both Olympic gold medalists, but in terms of boxing ability, there's light years between them. So they approached it all wrong. You know, I seen him walking to the ring, asking for advice from people on the way to the ring. Anthony, you're 6'6", you're 18 stone, you're the heavyweight champion of the world. Where's your belief? Believe in yourself. Get a game plan. You know, train and just, you know, just believe in that game plan. Stick to it. Believe in it, and go in the ring and impose your physical strength and size on Usyk. I don't think we'll see that. I think Usyk's got an answer for everything. But I hope for Anthony that he comes out and believes in himself. You know, and who's going to train him for this fight? What's the deal with that? You know, I'd like to see everything finalised, confirmed, and him in the gym. And to beat Alexander Usyk, you need to have a foolproof plan. You need to stick to it. You need to believe in yourself. And if you don't do any of them things, if you don't do all of them at 100%, you will not beat that man.
So it looks like all 4 belts are tied up for at least the first part of 2022. But how about the second half of the year? Who can put themselves in contention? Well, Gareth A. Davis can run us through some of those contenders.
Well, I'm looking at a list here, actually. I dragged up a list before we started speaking today. I know Deontay Wilder is saying that he may walk away from the sport, and Tyson Fury is saying, no, stay in the sport. Deontay Wilder against any of those guys? When I was with Fury the other day, he said, didn't you enjoy the last fight? What about a Fury-Wilder 4 at some point? Derek Chisora, who I've been with recently, and obviously he's fighting this weekend, has said he wants his trilogy with Dillian and he wants his trilogy with Tyson. So Derek could be in the mix if he looks spectacular against Joseph Parker. And I think he might spring an upset. Joe Joyce is in the mix, of course. He's ranked number 3 with the WBC. He's 7 with the IBF. And 2 with the WBO. Joseph Parker's way up there as well. There's a guy who looked very good against Afia Jegba on the undercard of Wilder Fury 3, and that's Frank Sanchez. He's not the biggest heavyweight in the world, but he's so skilled, and he showed that against Ajagba, that he can fight against big punching heavyweights and be on his toes and be around the ring, and he's very, very clever fighter from Central America. So I think all those guys are in the mix. I'm looking at any others that might be there. That's probably about it. Andy Ruiz is highly ranked still, but he's got to be in shape and he's got to prove himself, in my view. But and of the other ones that aren't really there yet, I see Tony Yoka having a big year in 2022. He's gone very quiet. Will he cling on to his Olympic gold from Rio, or will Joe Joyce end up getting that? But also there's Jared Anderson on the rise, who's not quite in those top 10s yet, but I think is going to be one of the stars of the future. If I was to pick one fighter at heavyweight who's going to do well in 2022, I'm going to go for Joe Joyce outside those other four.
So, what will happen in 2022? talkSPORT's Joe Coleman gives us his prediction on how he thinks the year will pan out.
I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to get Usyk Fury. If I'm being really honest, I think they were pictured together over the weekend. I think that fight could be happening. I think Anthony Joshua's still yet to determine what his next plan is. I think that although he's triggered that rematch clause, he's not made the decisions we were kind of expecting with his team. We saw him go out to America, the likes of Dillian, etc., Ronnie Shields. I think there could be something, a bit of a sting in the tail, and I think that will mean fans will finally get this undisputed heavyweight title fight. If it doesn't and everything stays as is, great. I'm not going to complain. It means we'll see all four of them in action. First one being obviously that Usyk Joshua rematch. I can't see anything different, if I'm honest with you. If anything, I can see an Usyk late stoppage. He nearly got that at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last time out. So for me, I think Usyk would prevail from that. I think Fury would have too much for Whyte. I think he could put on an absolute masterclass and again get a late stoppage himself. He would feel the threat, the danger that needs to take him to that next level, which we've seen him go to several times in the past. And I think that's the undisputed fight. It's just a case of when it happens for me personally. If it's the latter stage of 2022, fantastic. I'm not going to complain. It'll be, an incredible spectacle. Whenever Fury fights, it always is.
So, if it is going to be a fight between Tyson Fury and Oleksander Usyk for the prize of becoming the undisputed heavyweight world champion, then who wins? Well, here's a current undisputed champion, Josh Taylor.
I can't see past the big man, but having said that, you definitely can't underestimate Usyk. He's a wizard, he's very, very clever fighter. The way he moves, the way he thinks inside the ring, and the way he changes up his tactics and the way he fights is very, very good.
Let's give the final word to the promoters, the men who can make these fights happen. I asked Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren whether they think there will be a fight for all four belts in 2022.
The business will call for it. To be honest, it's not anybody's fault. It just didn't happen because of situations like arbitrations. The fact that we couldn't get, all this nonsense with trying to get AJ to step aside. It just didn't happen. So what I think you have to clear the decks. You have to get rid of obligations like the rematch that they've got with AJ. Usyk has a rate. AJ, get this Dillian Whyte thing, get them out of the way. Then everything, the winners are the winners. And then they, and I believe Tyson will be the winner. But then our man fights the winner of the other fight. I want to see Joshua win. I don't believe he will, because I think Usyk has got his number. But even if it's Usyk and Tyson, it's a massive fight, a big fight here.
Will we see an undisputed heavyweight world champion next year?
Who knows? Let's just keep seeing good fights. We keep chasing this undisputed, but as long as we see great fights, look, you saw Wilder against Fury was a great fight. Joshua against Usyk, great fight, great spectacle. Now Whyte against Fury, the rematch. We're seeing great heavyweight fights. So the dream for every fighter and promoter should always be to make undisputed fights. But if we can't, let's just make crackers along the way.
So will we get an undisputed heavyweight world champion in 2022? Well, like Frank Warren, I believe we could indeed get one next year. We know that Tyson Fury is set to take on Dillian Whyte. We just need some agreement when it comes to the purse splits. But that fight is set to take place in March of next year, potentially in Cardiff. And then we don't have too long to wait. Anthony Joshua tries to win back his belt against Oleksander Usyk. We expect that fight will take place on British soil, potentially in April. And then all roads point towards a fight for the undisputed heavyweight world champion. And that fight could take place at the end of next summer. And what would be an ideal venue? Wembley Stadium. However, I do fear, despite the fact that there is going to be at least one Brit involved, that as summer becomes autumn, the chance of that fight happening in the UK are going to decrease, which means it could be a fight that takes place in Saudi Arabia or America. It's a fight the whole world wants to see, and it's a fight that the whole world would want to host. Don't forget to check out our interviews in full and leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Will we get an undisputed heavyweight world champion in 2022? And if so, who will that be? Hope you've enjoyed the Boxing Insider this year. We'll be back with another episode at the start of next year. In the meantime, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our boxing content across the talkSPORT network.